You know what? I'm Nora Keene, and I am done being nice. I'm done pretending this didn't nearly destroy me. Because what I'm about to tell you is something I've been carrying for months now. And honestly, I don't care anymore who gets upset when they hear this. They weren't there. They didn't live through it. So here's what really happened the night my sister abandoned her children on my doorstep, and how saying one simple word changed everything. It was midnight. Midnight. I was already in bed, exhausted from a brutal week at work, when I heard it. This aggressive, insistent doorbell. Not a polite knock, not a gentle ring. Someone was leaning on that bell like their life depended on it, and my heart immediately started racing, because who the hell shows up at someone's door at midnight? I threw on a robe, my hands shaking, thinking maybe there's an emergency, maybe someone's hurt, maybe something terrible has happened. And you know what? I was right. Something terrible had happened, just not in the way I thought. I opened the door, and there they were. My nephew and niece, 7 and 5 years old, standing on my doorstep in the freezing cold, trembling, not just from the temperature, but from fear. Their little faces were pale, their eyes wide and glossy with tears. They were trying so hard not to cry. No bags, no jackets thick enough for the weather, no note, no explanation. Just two terrified children standing in the dark, alone. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was standing on her porch across the street, and she called out to me. Her voice was tight with concern. "They've been standing there for over 20 minutes, she said. Just standing there, alone." I was about to call the police. 20 minutes. These babies had been standing outside my door in the dark for 20 minutes, and I had no idea because I was already asleep. What if I hadn't woken up? What if I'd taken sleeping pills that night like I sometimes do? What if they'd been out there all night? I pulled them inside immediately, my hands shaking with rage and confusion, and this sick, twisting feeling in my stomach. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though I wanted to scream. "Where's your mom?" And my niece, sweet little Emma, looked up at me with those big eyes and whispered, "Mom said you'd take care of us. She said you'd open the door." Just like that, like it was normal, like this was supposed to happen. But here's the thing, and this is where my blood really starts to boil. I had already said no. That very same day, just hours earlier, my sister had called me and demanded I take the kids so she could go out. Not asked, demanded. And for the first time in my entire life, I told her no. I told her I couldn't do it. I had an important presentation at work the next morning, something I'd been preparing for weeks, something that could actually advance my career for once, instead of watching it stagnate because I'm always dropping everything to clean up her messes. I was respectful. I was firm. I said no, and I didn't apologize for it. And she went silent on that phone, dead silent. Then she just hung up. No argument, no guilt trip, just click, and she was gone. I should have known right then that she was planning something. I should have known she wouldn't just accept it. See? This is the part where I need to explain something about my family, about the role I've been forced into since I was a child myself. I'm the youngest, the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who's always been expected to sacrifice everything because that's just what I do, right? That's just who I am. My sister, she's the golden child, the one who got away with everything growing up, the one who could screw up over and over and over again, and somehow it was always someone else's fault. Usually mine. When she had kids, I was so happy for her. I really was. I love those children more than anything in this world. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being their aunt and became her free 24/7 childcare service. She'd call me at random times, during work meetings, during doctor's appointments, in the middle of the night, and just announce she was dropping the kids off, not asking if I was free, not checking if I had plans, just telling me they were coming and hanging up before I could object. And if I dared to say I couldn't do it? Oh, the guilt trips, the manipulation. I guess you don't really love them. I thought family was supposed to help each other. You're so selfish. On and on until I'd crack and say, fine, bring them over. And you know what the worst part was? She'd lie to everyone. She'd tell our parents, our relatives, her friends, Oh, my sister loves watching them. She practically begs me to let her babysit. Loves it. Like I was volunteering for this. Like I wasn't sacrificing my job performance, my social life, my mental health, my sleep, my entire existence to be her backup plan while she went out partying or shopping or doing whatever the hell she wanted to do without her children. Those kids started loving me more than they loved her. They'd cry when they had to go home. They'd ask me why they couldn't just live with me. And that broke my heart, because they deserved a mother who actually wanted to be around them, not someone who saw them as an inconvenience. I started setting boundaries about 6 months before that night. Real boundaries. I started saying no more often. I started prioritizing my own life, my own career, my own sanity. And my family, they hated it. They called me selfish. They said I was changing and not being understanding. Understanding of what? Understanding that my sister is a grown woman who chose to have children but doesn't want to actually raise them? Understanding that I'm supposed to destroy my own life to enable her irresponsibility? No. No, I was done understanding. So when she called that afternoon, asking me to take the kids, and I said no, it felt good. It felt powerful. It felt like I was finally standing up for myself after years of being walked all over. I had work. I had my presentation. I had a right to say no. She hung up, and I felt this weird sense of relief mixed with dread. Because deep down, I knew her. I knew she wouldn't just accept this. I knew she'd retaliate somehow. I just had no idea how far she'd actually go. Back to that night. The kids were inside my apartment, and I was trying to process what was happening. I checked their backpacks. Completely empty. No change of clothes, no toothbrushes, no snacks, nothing. She'd literally shoved them out of a car with empty backpacks like props to make it look like she'd prepared something. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. I called our parents. They hadn't heard from her. I stood there in my living room with these two frightened children, and I realized she'd done this on purpose. This was her punishment for me saying no. This was her way of saying, "You don't get to have boundaries with me." But then things started getting strange. Really strange. The kids weren't acting normal. They were jumpy, whispering to each other, constantly glancing at the windows like they expected to see something or someone. I made them hot chocolate, got them settled on the couch, tried to make them feel safe. But Emma kept staring at the front window, and when I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Mommy was crying in the car. She was yelling at someone on the phone." My stomach dropped. "Who was she yelling at?" I asked. Emma just shrugged, but my nephew, little Marcus, said something that made my skin crawl. "She told us not to tell. She said they were coming." They were coming. Who was coming? What did that mean? I checked all the locks on my doors. I closed all the curtains. I kept my phone in my hand, ready to call 911 if I needed to. And then I started hearing things. Footsteps outside. The creak of someone on my porch. I'd look out, and there'd be nothing. But I knew I wasn't imagining it. The kids heard it too. We all sat there in my living room, tense and afraid. And I was so angry, I thought I might actually explode. How dare she do this to them? How dare she do this to me? Whatever mess she'd gotten herself into, she'd dragged her innocent children into it. And now I was supposed to just deal with the consequences? Finally, around 2 in the morning, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered it, my voice sharp. "Hello?" Silence. Just breathing on the other end. Then the line went dead. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I just held those kids close and tried to convince them, and myself, that everything was going to be okay. But I didn't believe it. Not for a second. The next morning, I had to call in sick to work. My big presentation? Gone. All that preparation, all that effort. Completely wasted because my sister decided to use her children as weapons in her petty revenge game. I kept the kids home from school because I didn't know what else to do. I still couldn't reach her. And then, around noon, she finally called. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to scream at me. "How dare you?" she shrieked into the phone. "How dare you try to ruin my life?" I was so stunned I couldn't even respond at first. Ruin her life? What are you talking about? I finally managed to say. If anything happens, it's your fault, she spat. You caused this. You and your selfish attitude. You couldn't just help me out for one night, and now look what you've done. She was hysterical, sobbing and screaming, and none of it made any sense. I tried to stay calm. I tried to be rational. You dropped your kids off at midnight without telling me, I said, my voice shaking. You left them standing outside alone in the cold. What is going on? But she just kept screaming, blaming me for everything, and then she hung up again. I went to the family group chat, thinking maybe someone could help me make sense of this. Wrong, so wrong. My parents, my aunts and uncles, even my cousins, they all turned on me. Why are you making trouble? You know she's stressed. Stop being so dramatic. Just watch the kids and stop complaining. Not one person asked if the children were okay. Not one person questioned why she'd abandoned them in the middle of the night. It was all my fault for saying no in the first place. I was the problem. I was the villain. I stared at my phone, reading message after message of people who were supposed to love me, telling me I was selfish and difficult and unreasonable, and something inside me just broke. Or maybe it finally healed, because I realized in that moment that I was never going to win with these people. I was never going to be seen as anything other than the person who exists to make everyone else's life easier. But then the kids told me something that changed everything. We were sitting at my kitchen table, and Emma was picking at her sandwich, and she said quietly, "Mom said she might not come back." I froze. What? She looked up at me, those innocent eyes filled with confusion and fear. Before she made us get out of the car, she said she might not come back. She said we'd be better with you. Might not come back. The words echoed in my head. What did that mean? Was she planning to leave permanently? Was she in some kind of danger? Was this all part of some breakdown? I didn't know what to think anymore. I was angry and terrified and exhausted, and these poor kids were caught in the middle of whatever disaster their mother had created. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped. Police officers. 2 of them. I opened the door, my hands trembling, and they asked if they could come in. They were looking for my sister. She'd been reported missing. Missing. Her car had been found abandoned in a parking lot about 15 minutes from my apartment. Her phone was turned off. No one had seen or heard from her since the night she dropped the kids off. They wanted to know when I'd last spoken to her, what she'd said, if she'd seemed upset or dangerous or suicidal. I told them everything, the phone call where I said no, the midnight drop-off, the strange things the kids had said, the hysterical call the next morning. They took notes, asked more questions, requested a formal statement, and then Marcus said something that made everyone in the room go still. Mommy was yelling in the car. She said, "You can't take them, they're mine." The officers exchanged glances. "Who was she talking to?" one of them asked gently. Marcus just shrugged. "Someone on the phone, she was really mad." The officers asked if they could speak to the kids more, asked if I could bring them to the station for a proper interview with a child specialist. I agreed, because what else could I do? My sister was missing, her children were traumatized, and I was somehow responsible for all of it just because I dared to say no. The next 3 days were a nightmare. I took time off work. There went my professional reputation. I dealt with police interviews. I took care of 2 scared, confused children who kept asking where their mommy was and when she was coming back. My family continued to blame me in the group chat, posting things like, "If you had just helped her, she wouldn't have disappeared." And, "This is what happens when you abandon family." I stopped responding. I stopped defending myself. What was the point? They'd already decided I was guilty. And then, on day 3, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it, expecting maybe another silent call, another creepy attempt to scare me. Instead, it was the police chief. He asked if I could come down to the station, said they'd found something that changes everything. My stomach twisted into knots. I got a neighbor to watch the kids and drove to the station, my mind racing with horrible possibilities. What had they found? Was she dead? Was she hurt? Was I somehow going to be arrested for this? I sat down in that cold, sterile interview room, and the police chief dropped a folder on the table in front of me. "Your sister isn't missing," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "She's hiding." I stared at him, not understanding. He opened the folder and showed me evidence that made my entire world tilt sideways. Phone records, text messages, witness statements. My sister had deliberately staged her own disappearance. She'd parked her car in that lot, turned off her phone, and gone to stay with a friend 2 towns over. And she'd filed a false report claiming I had kidnapped her children. Kidnapped. She told the police I'd taken her kids against her will, that she was scared for their safety, that I was unstable and dangerous. She'd created this entire elaborate lie to avoid taking responsibility for abandoning her children. The police had been investigating me this whole time, and it was only when they dug deeper and found inconsistencies in her story, security footage of her dropping the kids off alone, neighbors' statements, her own hysterical phone call to me that they'd traced and recorded, that they'd realized she was lying about everything. I sat there in that room, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The rage that filled my body was so overwhelming, I thought I might actually pass out. She'd tried to frame me for kidnapping her own children. She'd put me through hell, put her kids through hell, wasted police resources, traumatized everyone involved, all because I'd said no. All because I'd set a boundary. The police chief told me they were pursuing charges against her for filing a false report and child abandonment. Child Services was getting involved. This wasn't going away quietly. When everything came out, when the evidence was undeniable, my family had to face the truth. Some of them apologized. Weak, pathetic apologies that didn't come close to making up for how they'd treated me. Others just went silent, too proud or too ashamed to admit they'd been wrong. My parents were horrified. They couldn't believe their golden child had done something so cruel, so manipulative, so dangerous. But I could believe it, because this was who she'd always been. This was just the first time she'd faced actual consequences for it. The kid's father, who'd been overseas for work and didn't know any of this was happening, flew back immediately when he found out. He'd separated from my sister months ago because of her behavior, but they'd been trying to work out custody arrangements. Not anymore. He filed for full custody, and given everything that had happened, he got it. My sister was required to undergo psychiatric evaluation, attend mandatory parenting classes, and could only see the kids during supervised visits. The courts didn't play games with someone who'd abandoned their children and filed false police reports. Those kids started healing after that. They stopped jumping at every sound. They stopped looking out windows like someone was watching them. They felt safe with their dad. And they knew I was always there for them whenever they needed me. But on my terms now, not as some free babysitting service. They were sleeping better, acting calmer, smiling again. And every time I saw them laugh or play or just be normal kids, I felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief that they were okay. Rage that they'd been put through this in the first place. My sister tried to contact me once after everything settled. She sent me a long text message full of excuses and justifications and, "I'm sorry, but..." Garbage. Sorry, but I'd driven her to it by not helping her. Sorry, but she'd been so stressed and overwhelmed. Sorry, but if I'd just been a better sister, none of this would have happened. I read it once, felt my blood pressure spike, and then blocked her number. I was done, completely done. She didn't get to play victim anymore. She didn't get to make this my fault. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. Looking back now, I see everything clearly. I see the years of manipulation, the guilt trips, the emotional abuse disguised as needing help. I see how my family enabled her behavior and punished me for being the responsible one. I see how close I came to losing everything, my job, my reputation, possibly even my freedom, if those false accusations had stuck. And I see that the moment I finally stood up for myself, the moment I said no and meant it, everything exploded. Because people like my sister can't handle boundaries. They can't handle being told no. They'd rather burn the whole world down than accept responsibility for their own lives. So here's what I learned from all of this. Saying no is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Protecting your own well-being is not abandonment. And when someone tries to punish you for having self-respect, that tells you everything you need to know about their character and absolutely nothing about yours. Those kids are thriving now. I'm rebuilding my career and my life. And my sister? She's facing the consequences she should have faced years ago. All because I finally said no, and she decided to dump her children on my doorstep anyway. If you're in a situation like mine, where someone in your family is using you, manipulating you, making you feel guilty for having boundaries, please hear me when I say this. You don't owe anyone access to your life at the expense of your own well-being. Not your parents, not your siblings, not anyone. Family is supposed to lift you up, not drag you down. And if standing up for yourself makes you the villain in their story, then I'd rather be the villain than the doormat.